Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So Shazir, we are Group 1, and allow me to introduce ourselves. My name is Hafizi, and together with me I have Hati as well as Nora, and we will be presenting the first region, which is Europe. Now these are our group members. I'm Hafizi, and there's Hati as well as Nora. Now we're going to refresh a bit of our geography. Europe is located in the northern hemisphere. It is actually a peninsula of the Eurasian supercontinent, and it's bordered by the Arctic Ocean to the north, the Atlantic Ocean to the west, west here, and the Mediterranean, Black and Caspian Sea towards the south, down here. Okay, I do apologize. I'm just going to bring out the laser pointer. There we go. All right, so zooming in a bit, we were looking at the entire map of Europe. Now, based on our reference, the Contemporary World Regional Geography 4th edition, there are 35 countries in Europe. However, just to share some updates as of 2022, according to the United Nations, UN, there are actually 44 countries. So we will be excluding Russia, which will be presented as part of a different region by our friends later on. Okay. Right. So as for an introduction, Europe is basically one of the most sought after holiday destinations for a Malaysian, primarily because of its nice weather, which is not too hot and not too cold. Well, apart from that, we will be looking at the history of how Europe formed. Now, it is the heart of many global ideas and practices, such as Christianity, democracy, colonialism, imperialism, capitalism, and many others. Now, we are aware that the Europeans have made a lot of scientific discoveries, such as the Earth being round, the Earth revolving around the sun, Sir Isaac Newton's law of gravity, the theory of evolution from the Europeans' perspective, genetic science, and other scientific related discoveries through research. We will also take a look into the inventions by the Europeans. They have made many great advancements in technology, in terms of inventions such as the printing press, the usage of the microscope, telescope, steam engines, the railroads, the automobile system, as well as more recent times, we look at the satellite as well as the digital computer. Now, this was all possible because of the Industrial Revolution, which also came from Europe. It started in Europe, and because of it, it had actually changed and altered Europe's economy, their society, and later on, it expanded throughout the whole world. We also take a look at how these usage of technologies brought an advantage to the Europeans in terms of their goal of conquest. So it can either be from, as I mentioned, colonialism, imperialism, but their main idea was to gather as much wealth from abroad and bring it back to their countries. And finally, over the last 500 years, we will look into the idea of whether it's better for worse, how the European has used their own local ideas to lay the foundation of the modern times, the global economy, the structure of the world politics, and their spread of culture. So that is something interesting which we will want to address in this particular presentation. Okay, so weather. So as I did mention, Europe has a great weather, their climate. Want to pay attention to these red lines here, which is the North Atlantic Drift, aka the warm current. So this warm current is brought from the westerly winds, humid air from the North Atlantic Drift, these winds here. And they're also fed by the Gulf Stream waters, the warm waters. So you get those two is combined, the weather is very nice and mild. This results in most western coastal countries having a sea-temperate climate. So all around this coastal area here, you will see all these seas, these sea marks here, sea, right? Okay. And the more east you move in, the colder it gets. So now you're wondering, okay, what is this C, Bs, and Ds, and Es? So this is a system based by Koppen. Okay, so Koppen, he actually based his system as a botanist, how each, in terms of vegetation, how it grows to the climate region. Now, for Europe in particular, they do have a combination of all of these B, Cs, and Ds, and Es. So you have the first classification, then you have a sub and a third sub. All right. So for example, just to cherry pick here a bit. So you have a C temperate climate. Maybe we take this area here, yeah, which is the UK, CFB. So C is temperate, F means no dry season, and B means warm summer. All right. So since I mentioned that, we'll move in to the first temperate climate, or climate, which is the oceanic temperature climate. So as mentioned, CFB, no dry season and warm summer. So this is a very common climate in the Western countries. It stretches all the way from Norway to Spain, and the storms from Atlantic Ocean bring rainfalls throughout the year. However, we want to share here that in the winter, the temperature rarely drops below freezing temperature. So it's between -1 to 4 degrees Celsius. And in the summer, the temperature doesn't become too hot. It's between 15 to 27 degrees Celsius. Now, to show as a comparison, London and the island of Pourquoi in France. So as mentioned, in January, we look here, both are very similar. It's between 0 to 8 degrees, and in France is 0 to 10 degrees. So it doesn't go below -1, and the average here is 4 degrees Celsius. And for summertime, it can go as high as 27 in France, and in London is 24 degrees Celsius. So it doesn't go beyond that. So it's a very nice temperature, which makes things very, very mild, and people can, laze around in the sun without being too hot, and then in the winters without being too cold. All right. So that concludes my portion of the weather, and my friend Hati and Nora will continue. I'll see you in the next portion of the video. Thank you, sir.
Okay, next we will move on to the next temperature climate, which is subtropical winter rain climates. Europe has some subtropical spots in warmer coastal areas within the Mediterranean climate area. This the climate in the southern Mediterranean with little or no frost can be defined as the subtropical climate. This is the case of the coastal areas of the southern Portugal, Algarve, southern Spain, which includes Andalusia, Almeria, Murcia, and southern Italy, Sicilia, and Calabria, as well as the southern Greece. Even cooler subtropical areas can be found in the southern France, which is Côte d'Azur. Next, we have the continental temperature climate. The continental type of climate dominates a giant share of Europe, covering northern Ukraine, eastern Belarus, Russia, most of Finland, and northern Sweden. A continental climate means cold, white winters and beautiful, warm summers. So the next chapter covers the environmental problems in Europe. This chapter will discuss the impacts of industrialization or the industrial revolution, as well as the spread of factory concentrated production. And then we'll also discuss on environmental effects resulting from the energy sources used and the excessive pollution of the Mediterranean Sea. So passing it over to Hati to discuss further in detail on the environmental problems in Europe.
Assalamualaikum, sir. This is Hati Musa. I will help Nora to explain further on the issue in Europe. Europe shares the same issue as other regions when it comes to environmental problems. Water and air pollution is the biggest problem facing in all regions. As mentioned by Nora, there are three biggest environmental issues in Europe. Let's see the first one, impact of industrialization. River and the air were heavily contaminated as a result of the Industrial Revolution and the expansion of factory concentrated production. Occasionally, major pollution incidents still kill fish in major rivers such as the Rhine. In 1990s, a number of government agencies managed to reduce the pollution and revive the fish stock at the Thames River in England. Winter smoke that blighted major urban and industrial areas in the 1950s significantly decreased after domestic industrial coal burning was made illegal. Thermal power stations burning coal emit sulfur and nitrogen compounds that lead to acid rain, and the highest level of acid pollution occurred during the communist era along the Czech, Polish, and East German. It's also known as the Black Triangle. Even though there was a success in reducing industrial pollution in the 1990s, there were more cars and trucks on the road. The cars release particles of carbon, nitrogen oxide, and sulfur that interact with sunlight to reduce air quality. Let's see another environment concern on energy sources. Coal burning and nuclear power plants are two main energy sources that have negative impact on the environment. Domestic is the main source of energy until late 1950s. It provided 90% energy need in the UK. After 1955, domestic production fell sharply as the environmental costs of burning coal and imported oil from Southwest Asia became more affordable. By 1972, oil supplied 65% of the sub-region energy needs, while reduced to 22%. Mostly it used to generate electricity. In 1970, oil price has raised in the tenfold, which has led to exploration and production of North Sea Basin, which began with the discoveries of natural gas in the Netherlands in 1963. By mid-1980s, natural gas became the cheapest and the cleanest fuel for electricity generators. Next is nuclear energy. Nuclear energy contributed 30% of the EU electricity in 2009. However, the nuclear accident at Fukushima power station that resulted from an earthquake and tsunami has alarmed across the region. Germany has decided to shut down many of its power plants. Then the clean and the renewable energy such as wind, hydro, and solar energy are attracting massive investment and expanding rapidly in Europe. The windy west coast of European countries are among the best locations for windmills, which makes the wind energy is the best source for Europe. Lastly, let's see what environmental issues facing at the Mediterranean Sea. Population growth in the 1900s combined with crowding into coastal locations, industrialization, and the great increase in tourism has led to excessive pollution of the Mediterranean Sea. The Mediterranean Sea is one of the world's major shipping lanes, with carrying 28% of the seaborne oil traffic. It has the world's highest levels of oil pollution, and it takes about 80 to 150 years to be completely renewed by Atlantic Ocean. Tourism and the movement of coastal area are growing. Tourists arrive mainly between July and August when water is short supply and local sewage systems find hard to cope. In 1975, the Mediterranean Action Plan was developed to tackle the pollution problem. Through this action plan, sewage system has improved only in wealthier countries. When the pollution is reduced, the coastline and its delicate system are certainly changed when coastal wetlands are reclaimed built. That's all I have on the topic of environmental problem. Now Hafizi will continue on the history of culture.
Okay, Assalamualaikum, sir. Right, I will be continuing on the history and culture of Europe. So we will look at how Europe has, as a fragmented world region, it has many small and medium-sized countries that has varied history and conflict and cooperation throughout that region. There's a lot of diversity of the European people and a lot of migration going on, as well as looking at the new cultural practices which will shape the world. Okay. All right. So migration of people. There are around 5 distinct groups we will look at: the Greeks, Romans, Celts, Germanic, and Slavic people. Now, to start off, we have the Greeks, who are down here in the south. And we have the Romans, who started from Italy. That's their native area. We have the Celts towards the area which is the United Kingdom area as we know today. We had the Gauls from Germany, and we had the Vikings, who later we will discuss a bit more where they originated from. But for now, we can say that they are from the main area here, which is Sweden, Norway, and Denmark. And we have the Slavic people, from Russia and Poland. Okay, so the Greeks, they're the first, I would say, civilization that we look at. Modern Greeks only inhabited the southwestern corner of Europe. Their ancestors were firmly established in the south of Europe from 1000 BC. And Greeks basically had a lot of contribution in mainly towards the area of science and humanities. There were a lot of philosophers from the Greek area here. And to name a few, we have, let's say, scientists such as Plato, Socrates, who again also were philosophers, and they had their ideas, which are in many ways viewed and influence the modern way that we look in today. So this is the map of Greece. Okay, this stretches all the way from here. And we have the Celtic people. So the Celtic people basically are covering the area of Central and Western Europe between 850 to 450 BC. They take their names from places such as Bohemia, Gaul, and the Alps and the Rhine. Yeah, and they started to wane or disappear, dwindle down as the Romans and the later people took over their land. However, remnants of their culture can still be found in the language and culture of modern Welsh, Scots, Irish, Bretons, and of the Western France. So we can see that these are the nations right now who still are considered as Celtic. Ireland, Scotland, Cornwall, Isle of Man, Wales, Brittany, and Galicia. Okay, and they are mainly at the northern area here of the UK. All right. Now, for the Romans, around 100 BC, Rome actually had eclipsed Greek. There's a lot of similarities between the Romans and the Greeks in terms of their architecture. If you look at the temples, both are very similar. You have the Roman pillars and the Greek pillars. They look a bit the same, but there are very distinctive differences also at the same time. Now, the Romans, they were very famous because they managed to actually stretch their empire very, very wide from the Mediterranean area all the way to the British Isles. They had built an extensive road system, as we can see here, and the roads are still available today. Yeah, so they were one of the first civilizations to do so, and it was easy for the Romans to conquer other lands because of this road system. Yeah, they can move people, move troops, move supplies very easily. They also had many army camps, which actually later on changed to become very famous cities and prosperous cities, such as London and Paris. Romans spoke Latin, and they also adopted Christianity in AD 381. But after the fall of Rome, their occupied territories changed a lot of their language from Latin into what we know as modern French, modern Spanish, and Portuguese, Italian, and Romanian. The center of Roman Catholic is still located in Rome, and the persecution against the Jews actually later on made the Nazi Holocaust reduce the numbers of the Jews. So some of the famous buildings is the ancient Colosseum, and we can also take note that many of the Roman influences and inventions are used today. So we have the sewer and toilets, that stemmed from Roman influence. We have the gladiator, which is modern time entertainment, like wrestling and all, that's from the gladiator times. The calendar that we use today is based on the Roman calendar. And we have Julius Caesar, who is a very prominent general and emperor, for the Romans. Now moving on, we have the Germanic people. So these tribes were very nomadic. They threatened the Roman Empire. So I think the best way to cover this is to show how their movement began. So in 400 AD, we have the Celts in the UK area here, and Rome is down here in South Italy. So the Germanic tribes, the Gauls, okay, they migrated a lot, and they, put their stamp in Germany. And during this time, they were one of the first, I think the only people here to ever sack Rome. That shows their might and capability. So to sack Rome is no easy feat. They managed to plunder the wealth and disperse into different areas of Europe. So they moved to France. They later moved on to the northern part here of Sweden, Norway, and Denmark. And by 800 AD, the Celts had changed or evolved into Angles and Saxons, and the Gauls down in France became the Franks. And later on, we have a new kind of people that emerged, which were named Vikings. So the Vikings were very, very known for their seafaring ways. They built longboats, which were able to conquer many, many lands. So these longboats here were very modern. Not every civilization was able to replicate these longboats, because what they were able to do is go and navigate the open seas. So because of that, they would travel as far as Iceland, occupying that area. They conquered the UK area here, and they also conquered, managed to move into Germany, And however, by the 1200 AD, the Viking civilization started to dwindle. This is because of a lot of war was happening. Christianity also had evolved. So that was something of a turning point, where a lot of the Germanic people or the Vikings here had converted to Christianity, because before that they were into paganism and different ways of thinking. And there was other matters such as the cooling of the climate. There was volcanic eruptions in Iceland, a lot of diseases and plagues that were brought in. So this has also led to the downfall of the Viking people. And I would recommend this this TV show, The Last Kingdom, to understand a bit more of how UK, the conflict was erupted between the Viking people and the UK, the Anglo-Saxons. So that's something that is, if you have time to look at it, please do look at it. And the final, I think, peoples would be the Slavs. This is the last group who migrated into Europe and began arriving in the 400 ADs. They pushed as far as the Elbe River in the middle modern Germany, and they threatened the Greeks. So there were three main people for the Slavs. We have the Western Slavs, which is the Poles, Slovaks, and Czechs. We have the Eastern Slavs, which is the Russians, Belarusians, and the Ukraine. And we also have the Southern Slavs, who are the Serbs, Croats, and Sloves. So they had a lot of, they had a lot of paganism going on, which was that. And, they all had their own distinct culture. Okay, moving on, we're looking at the rise of the European as a global superpower. So what they did, the Europeans, was they created the first global economy, which is known as a free market and capitalist. So capitalism, is basically an economic system that in terms of production of goods and services, it is privately owned and operated for profit. So it's not really shared amongst the people. So the richer you get, and the more wealth you get, you as an individual or as a company, you will profit from it. So that is the idea behind the capitalism. In the late 1400s, these capitalism merchants, they started to invest in trade and profited from gold and silver. Trade also means the trade of people, slavery, which the European powers would actually go and capture, the people from Africans country, from the Latin countries, and enslave them. We can see later also that there was a lot of seafaring going on, exploration, between the 1418 to 1441. There's a lot of famous Portuguese and Spanish captains who would venture into and conquer new land. However, by doing this, what the Europeans had done was they started colonialism and imperialism in their countries which they were occupying. So there's a difference between colonialism and imperialism. So colonialism was a practice between the 1500s to 1900s, where the idea was to establish, go into the country and conquer and rule within that whole region. And by doing so, they created rule by a lot of fear. And however, the difference between the imperialism, which is a subset of colonialism, is that they didn't conquer, they didn't really settle, but they will rule through their army. So that means the local people will still be able to live in that area, but there is a constant threat of army lingering. So they will be forced to bow down to the European power. Now, again, this I mentioned here, this military force was the drive behind imperialism. And what they did do was they just continued to march into and plunder, gain advantage of the locals, where the benefit would be reaped by the Western countries, the Europeans, and the local people would be meant to suffer. However, some of the things that did emerge from this was Christopher Columbus. He actually found a way to America by accident. He intended to find a route to India. America was named after an Italian sailor, which is Amerigo Vespucci. And there's this, as mentioned before, like Portuguese and the Spanish, they were very, very good at seafaring and venturing. So we have Vasco da Gama from the Portuguese, and there was a race between Portugal and Spain in conquering and expanding the New World. There was also Dutch, who also came to the picture, and the British, who also had a competition between France as a supremacy for the North America and India power. So as I did mention earlier on, so Europe's exploration is not simply of conquering, but a merger of different cultures. So from their travels, they had actually brought back different ideas, different technologies and science, which they would later expand. So for an example, the Chinese people were the people to invent gunpowder, but later on, the Europeans had changed it, and they were able to design more powerful cannons and guns, which were used in their conquest. Apart from that, when they traveled to America, they found the potato, which became a staple diet in the European culture. We also look at how the exploration, they found cotton, tobacco, tea, cocoa, which is again part of their staple day and living. And again, through the mingling and encounters with Chinese, they learned about the compass. I've mentioned gunpowder and also paper and printing. Okay. All right, so that concludes my portion, and I will pass this to my colleague who will be presenting the Industrial Revolution.
The Industrial Revolution began by the 1830s and the 1840s in Britain, and soon it spread to the rest of the world. So growing trade of the northwestern Europe lead to increasing demand for manufacturing goods, and then leads to the technology's innovation. It was the transition from creating goods by hand to using machines. So goods that had once been painstakingly crafted by hand started to be produced in mass quantities by machines in factories, with the introduction of new machines and techniques in textile, iron making, and other industries. Three of the significant inventions during the Industrial Revolution is the spinning jenny, steam power, and telegraphy. So here is the picture of a spinning jenny. So Britain had a long history of producing textile like wool, linen, and cotton. But prior to the Industrial Revolution, the work was performed in small workshops or even homes by individual spinners, weavers, and dyers. Starting in the mid-18th century, innovations like the spinning jenny made weaving cloth, spinning yarn, and thread much easier. Producing cloth became faster, more efficient, and required less time and far less human labor. Second, we have the impact of the steam power. Just as the steam engines needed coal, steam power allowed miners to go deeper to extract more of this relatively cheap energy source, which is coal. The demand for coal skyrocketed throughout the Industrial Revolution and beyond, as it would be needed to run not only the factories used to produce the manufactured good, but also the railroads and steamships used for transporting them. So by that time, steam-powered boats and ships were already in wide use, carrying goods along Britain's rivers and canals, as well as across the Atlantic. And then we have the telegraphy. The later part of the Industrial Revolution also saw key advances in communication method as people increasingly saw the need to communicate efficiently over long distances. In 1837, British innovator William Cooke and Charles Wheatstone patented the first commercial telegraphy system, which is what we call or known of as Morse code nowadays. Passing it over to Hati to discuss further on the nationalism and world wars. The year 1945 marked the end of the worst military conflict in history. It brought unprecedented destruction and loss of life. The struggle of Nazi Germany and the Imperial Japan for global supremacy have exhausted the human and the economic resources of much of Europe, as well as East and Southeast Asia. So significant events after 1945 includes UK, France, Netherlands was confronted with independence movement from their colonies. US and Soviet Union to emerge as a new world power, and Soviet Union moved to the East European and fostered communism. Seen here is the map of colonized countries and its decolonization after the World War II. In the 3 years after the end of the Second World War, India, Pakistan, Burma, and Ceylon all received or achieved independence from the British Empire, with Malaya and Singapore follows later in 1957 and 1965 respectively. And this table is the simplified key differences between democracy and communism. Key differences are based on the economic system, how the leaders come into power, and the rights given to the people. Organizations in Europe. So NATO, simply put, is actually a military alliances. It was established in the aftermath of World War II. The organization implemented the North Atlantic Treaty signed in Washington on April 4th, 1949. NATO is a collective security system whereby its independent member states have agreed to defend each other against attacks by third parties. In 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed and the Cold War ended. So the alliance still remained in place even after the dissolution of the Soviet Union. Okay, and then NATO functions. So some of the military operations that NATO have taken throughout the years was that one, they had a military operation in Bosnia and Herzegovina intervention in 1992, which the war was due to the breakup of Yugoslavia. And then there was a war in Afghanistan following the 9/11 in 2001. Another military operation was in the Gulf of Aden Anti-Piracy 2009, which is to protect the maritime traffic in the Gulf of Aden and the Indian Ocean from Somali pirates. Libya intervention, which is due to the Libyan civil war, violence between protesters and the Libyan government under the Colonel Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. So seen here is the map of NATO members, its partners, and other action plans. NATO has 30 members, mainly in Europe and North America. Some of these countries also have territory on multiple continents and other areas as defined in NATO's area of responsibility under Article 6 of the North Atlantic Treaty. Additionally, North Macedonia joined the alliances in March 2020, with Finland and Sweden applying for membership just this year following the Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So here are the member states of countries of NATO and the years that they have joined, and the flag states of NATO countries. Next, we have the European Union. The European Union was built with the aim of ending frequent wars among neighboring countries following the Second World War. In 1951, the European Coal and Steel Community, which is the ECSC, started uniting nations to achieve peace. The 6 founding countries of the EU are Belgium, France, Germany, Italy, Luxembourg, and Netherlands. As more members joined the EU, it grew from a community of 6 member states to 27 member states, with the exit of United Kingdom in the early 2020. We also have the Treaty of Rome, which was signed in 1957, creating the European Economic Community, or a common market. It was followed by a period of economic growth, a result of lowering trade restrictions among its member states. The EU experienced continued expansion ever since, with the fall of communism and the Berlin Wall, supporting a closer-knit Europe. In 1993, the Single Market Agreement was completed, allowing 4 types of freedom: the movement of goods, services, people, and money. The EU represents one in a series of efforts to integrate Europe since the World War II. At the end of the war, several Western European countries sought closer economic, social, and political ties to achieve economic growth and military security, and to promote a lasting reconciliation between France and Germany. So here are some of the advantages and disadvantages of countries joining the EU. The advantage, which will be the lower prices, free movement of labor, increased competition, and the advantages would be cost of maintaining the membership, and then loss of controls over its independence, and an increased number of immigration. Next, we will divulge over the sub-regions of Europe. We will start with Western Europe. So this figure showed the countries in Western Europe and the location on the map. The countries, there are 9 countries in Western Europe, which is Austria, Belgium, France, Germany, Republic of Ireland, Luxembourg, Netherlands, United Kingdom, and Switzerland. Here is the summarized economic activities in Western Europe. The 3 economic activities in Western Europe is automobile, financial services, and mining. And then first, we have the Mercedes-Benz, commonly referred to as Mercedes and sometimes as Benz. It's actually a German luxury and commercial vehicle automotive brand established in 1926. Mercedes-Benz AG is headquartered in Stuttgart, Baden-Württemberg, Germany. Next, we have AXA. AXA is a French multinational insurance company. The head office is in Paris, France. It also provides investment management and other financial services. Lastly, we have Carmus. So Camus is a Belgian mining company that produces lime and limestone. The Camus group has production facilities in Europe, North America, and Africa. Its head office is located in Louvain-la-Neuve. Okay, next we will discuss on Northern Europe. Northern Europe consists of 7 countries, namely Denmark, Finland, Norway, Iceland, Greenland, Faroe Island, and Sweden. Okay, moving on, here's another summarized version of the economic activities in Western Europe, which involves telecommunication, manufacturing, manufacturing of consumer electronics, and oil and gas. So Ericsson is a Swedish multinational networking and telecommunication company headquartered in Stockholm. In Stockholm, they are the leading provider of 5G network equipment in the US. And then next we have the Bang & Olufsen. Is a Danish high-end consumer electronics company that designs and manufactures audio products, television sets, and telephones. And then lastly, we have Equinor, which is a Norwegian state-owned multinational energy company headquartered in Stavanger. It is primarily a petroleum company operating in 36 countries with additional investment in renewable energy. In the 2020 Forbes Global 2000, Equinor was ranked as the 169th largest public company in the world. And then passing over to Hati to discuss further on Mediterranean Europe. I
will continue with the rest of the sub-region in Europe. Next sub-region is the Mediterranean Europe. If we can see on the map, the arrow is pointing at Mediterranean larger countries. Mediterranean Europe consists of 2 groups. First group is larger country, that is Portugal, Spain, Italy, and Greece. The other 5 small countries are Andorra, Monaco, Vatican City, San Marino, and Malta. Going forward are the 3 economic activities in Mediterranean Europe. Algae culture industry is very important to the Mediterranean countries. The warm, dry summers and cool winters that seldom drop below freezing allow the Mediterranean countries to produce crops that are difficult to grow in other sub-regions of Europe, such as olive, table and wine grapes, citrus fruit, fig, and specialized cereal grain pasta. Emilio Wahelu started the olive oil activity in 1967, initially taking good care of his land, and later he founded the family company named Acetes Wahelu in 1981. The company located at Torredonjimeno, Spain, which firstly was a mill producing virgin olive oil. The interesting fact is that 35% of the farmers in Spain work on olive plantation. Next industry is tourism. The Mediterranean warm climate, sunny beaches, and historic center, making tourism a major industry. Each year, Portugal and Greece receive 12 to 13 million tourists. Meanwhile, Italy and Spain typically each receive 40 to 50 million tourists per year. Husabout is one of the leading European travel companies, founded in 1998, which is based in Spain and Greece. The company aiming to provide a budget-friendly, freestyle travel for global trotters. They're also known as a bus network that covers 189 cities around the world. The last economic activity is transportation. The Hellenic Railway Organization is the Greek national railway company which owns, maintains, and operates all railway infrastructure in Greece. The first railway line that operated in Greece was the one connecting Athens and Piraeus, which opened in 1869. The last sub-region are East Central Europe. If you can see on the map, the colored region is part of the East Central Europe countries. The modern East Central Europe is made up of few countries because communist system, government and economies were imposed on them shortly after the World War II ended. First group is the Baltic, which consists of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Second is Poland, Czech, Slovak Republic, and Hungary. And the last group is the Balkan, which consists of Slovenia, Croatia, Montenegro, Albania, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Serbia, Macedonia, Romania, and Bulgaria. Now let us see what are the three economic activities in East Central Europe. Automobile manufacturing has been one of the East Central Europe success story. One of the biggest success stories comes from the Czech Republic. Skoda is the automotive company from Czech, which produce poor quality two-cylinder vehicles. But however, in 1990, Volkswagen purchased Skoda, and with the German management and huge capital injection, the company has become the most successful company. The Czech also has a great success in earning money through beer producing. Pilsner, the beers come from the town of Pilsen. Pilsner beer spread like a wildfire and become a massive export for Czech. It has transported to Germany by the river Elbe and throughout all the Austro-Hungarian Empire through beer trains. Meanwhile, the Alpetrol is Albania's state-owned company. The company is upstream producing petroleum in mining industry. The company is headquartered in Petos, Albania. Since 1918, more than 5,650 oil and gas wells have been drilled in Albania. 500 natural gas wells have been drilled, with 225 producing natural gas, and 5 oil fields have 4,728 oil wells.
Okay, so before we conclude our presentation of Region 1 Europe, we would like to also share some 25 interesting facts about Europe which people may not know. So number one, Vatican City is actually the smallest country in the world. I would also like to share that Iceland does not have any mosquitoes. And lastly, if you go to Belgium, the Brussels airport in Belgium is selling more chocolate in the world than anywhere else.
Three more interesting facts about Europe that most people don't know of. One, it's illegal in Switzerland to mow your lawn on Sundays. Two, European eats 50% of all the world's chocolate. And third is 40% of Europe is actually Russian territory.
Another three interesting facts is point number 19, which Denmark has 7,000 government names. Next is point number 23, which is quite interesting facts about Switzerland. It's surprised to know that it's actually illegal to have only one social pet in Switzerland. It sounds like one of the silliest laws, isn't it, sir? The social pet refers to guinea pig or parrot. The reason for this is that they are social species. They need social interaction to be happy. So owning a single guinea pig is considered harmful to its well-being and forbidden by law. The last interesting fact also related to animal, which is illegal to feed the pigeon in Venice. The Venice government banned pigeons feeding in St. Mark's Square with concern with the potential hazard of the birds dropping to human health and to help maintain the cleanliness of the place. We would like to conclude the presentation by providing some insights into current issue in Europe. To begin with, issue on the migration. The migrant crisis is not a new issue to Europe. Previously, in the topic of history, Hafizi has explained about the migration of the Greeks, Romans, Celts, Slavic, and other people to Europe. Europe migration crisis in 2015, which more than 1 million people, mostly from Syria and Afghanistan, entered the EU. It has sparking a crisis as countries struggle to cope with the influx and creating division in the EU, how best to deal with resettling. Then there is the Brexit issues. The Britain exit from the EU took place on 31st January 2020. It created new trade restriction between the UK and the rest of Europe and limits the ability of British citizens to move freely around the EU. Come to end of my part. I hope you enjoy with the video and Nora will continue to finish our video presentation. Thank you, sir.
Continuing on the next issue of the current issues in Europe, European energy crisis. So energy is used for a range of activities, including in transportation, household, industries, services, agriculture, and forestry. And in food production, energy is also used for fertilizers, harvesting, refrigeration, and heating. The EU imports about 80% of its total gas needs, with domestic production halving in the past 10 years. Germany, which has gas deposits of its own, banned fracking, as did France and other countries. So fracking is a drilling method used to extract petroleum, oil, or natural gas from deep in the earth. In the current scenario, if utility bills continue to rise, unemployment number increase, and there is an economic slowdown, experts believe that this would reflect in the streets too. There's also a recent issue on the European energy crisis, which is the Nord Stream pipeline leak. It's possible an attack. It's actually an undersea pipeline that connects Russia and EU and Europe countries. So the Nord Stream attack has been a wartime mystery, prompting finger pointing and speculation. The attacks has been going on since 2022, end of Q4 of 2022. And then on January 11, 2023, just recently, without confirming that Russia was indeed the perpetrator of the Nord Stream blast, NATO and EU vowed to protect their infrastructure from further attacks. So next is the aging population of Europe. The European Union and other regions across the globe are expected to face rapidly aging populations this century. More than 30% of EU population is expected to be 65 or older by the year of 2100. This demographic shift could have a significant impact on the region's economic prospect. So the impact of the Europeans' aging population is that typically the retirement age population is not working, and they would mainly rely on pensions to support themselves financially. Therefore, the bigger the elderly population, the more pressure they would put on a country's social safety net. As the population ages, taxes may rise to help cover those inflating costs, and a decrease in a region's working age population can also have a significant impact on innovation and experience in the overall workforce. So with this, we conclude our presentation on Region 1, Europe. We hope this presentation will better improve the knowledge of this region and provide some insights of the region's background, other informations, and current issues. Thank you.